Okay, we are live. Welcome, everybody, to At the Gardens. I'm your host, Garrett Wilhelm, CEO of Creative Gardens Early Education. We are a company that builds personalized learning schools for early education kids. And for this year, we're a company that provides an amazing experience for Loudoun County public school learners who you're charged with being their teachers at home. It's a lot for you to do. You got to work. Come on over to us. We will take care of you. We do it safely. We abide by and we go above and beyond CDC guidelines to make sure that kiddos are safe here and that they're able to actually understand the concepts in which they're supposed to be taught, not just checking boxes like we did this past spring. So thank you for that little introduction. As always at the Gardens, and today's a special Labor Day episode, so I'm super excited. I have some really amazing local people on to bring you guys value and just talk about kids in general and talk about kids' products and discipline and education. And today is no different. Today I have a fantastic pair, couple, if you will, husband and wife team, Tom and Isabel Coyle. They are the founders of Be the Ultimate You. Let me make sure I got that right. I think I did. I hope I did. Be the Ultimate You. That's exactly right. And we're going to talk today a little bit about leadership. We're going to talk a lot about health and wellness. And yeah, I can't wait to have them on. So without further ado, I'm going to bring them on. Here we go. Tom and Isabel, welcome to At the Gardens.
Hey, Garrett, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
I'm so excited you guys reached out. I put these great posts all the time on the social collective pages to see who wants to come on, who's local, and wants to come on and talk about kids. And you guys reached out, and I thought it was a perfect opportunity to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing to benefit and push the needle forward with kids and wellness in general. So we always like to start the show off with a nice origin story. So if you can imagine, you get X-Men #1 and you're peeling through, and I definitely want to hear that from you guys. So tell me a little bit about what brought you guys to working to push the needle forward for kids.
That's an interesting story. And how this all started, this was 2012, and I was sitting through a middle management class at work, and it was extremely boring, and to put it charitably. And, and we're sitting there. This person's teaching leadership, and they're sitting up there with pie charts and a presentation and a voice that would make Bill Lumbergh sound like Mr. Enthusiasm.
It's an Office Space joke, guys.
And it was just, and like, no one's going to learn anything about leadership from this. And I contrast that with my experience at West Point, where it was 4 years of a leadership laboratory from the time you're a freshman and you're basically a follower to the time you are a senior, where you're pretty much running the Corps of Cadets, and then in the Army and having that continuous leadership education. That this is it has to be something that involves doing. And around that same time, Isabel and I were dating, and her mom pointed out that there was this video she showcased. It made all the rounds on social media. It was a group of teenagers bullying an elderly chaperone on the bus. She said, you need to work with young people. Not really thinking that I walked away from that, not really realizing I was walked away from that leadership event thinking I should do something with leadership, but I wasn't sure my target market. And then that was the connection for kids. And I looked at it from, that was my formative experience at West Point. And also, I think a lot of how we deal with kids, and I see it around there, is one, there's been a new phenomenon of the bulldozer parent, the parent that clears every obstacle in the path of the kid. There's no effort to build resiliency and that type of thing. And then at the same time, we try to treat everybody the same way. Like I myself, and here's kind of a story that gets to how I deal with kids. When Isabel, she went to have one of these conversations with me that she had like an issue she wanted to raise, and she wanted me to sit down next to her and have this conversation. And she kept getting frustrated because I would stand up and walk around. I can't think if I sit down and sit still. I can't do that. My mind is going, sit down, sit still, don't move, sit still, don't move. And I ignore everything you're saying. But if I can get that. And I realize there's a lot of kids out there who need that. And I wanted to create my program to showcase there's, we have this sort of the bell curve, if you will, and we try to make people fit within a certain parameter. This is certain what we've established as normal. And we can talk more about this with some specific examples, but I thought, a lot of kids have a variety of ways of how they do things, how they process information, how they can be successful. And I think we are hurting kids and adults, frankly, by trying to have a sort of set pattern of behavior that we say, this is how you must be to be successful.
Oh, 100%. And Isabel, and we'll get more into that in a second, but Isabel, I know that you're working on a cookbook, which I think is fantastic. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what got you there, and then health and wellness in general? I did a little research on the back end, and I see a lot you speaking at a lot of health and wellness seminars, things like that. So I would love to kind of hear a little bit about that path.
Yes, of course. And I think health and wellness has become even that much more important now with the situation, just the period we are. And I think that's just going to become even more important. And so and in that sense, I'm happy that people are starting to put more attention on self-care and healthy eating and nutrition. So yeah, mine was really a journey, sort of a transition where I was working in a career in public health, very neat, global health, very neat, loved it. And then I became a parent and had my own sort of journey of finding I leaned into motherhood, but wanted to continue working with the public health and the area of health. I have a whole, go into what actually drew me into health in the first place, and just the way it affects so many people at every stage in life. But it was really becoming a mom that really directed me to look more at healthy eating with your children involved. I have my own journey. In terms of I had to really become more aware of what I was doing for myself as well when I became a mom and putting prioritizing for myself health and well-being. You can go to my website. I have a whole journey of weight loss also that I found myself in sort of a rut. And when, at some point about 2 years after the kids were born, and I just was trying, who am I? You go through this identity. I'm a mom now. I'm still a passionate professional. And it really had to be starting from within, rediscovering myself, and also just health, putting attention on health and cooking, healthy eating, and really making the children part of that routine. Because I think, and I'll stop, sometimes folks can make the mistake that they want to separate their work and the children. But once I'm a parent, that just is not possible. I don't think you try to do that.
Well, and ultimately, and I think this is where this can kind of tie in both of the things that you guys are doing is, you talk a lot about health and wellness, and you talk about how your shift from in importance of health and wellness when you had kids, and then understanding how important it is for kiddos to be healthy. Do you find that in both of your guys' kind of passions that, and especially for you, Tom, how you're talking about more experiential learning, I think just by going through your own weight loss process and health and wellness process, your kids probably through osmosis start to pick up some of those traits, probably even your husband as well too, just in the sense of, if you're cooking healthy foods and then delivering, or, and he's cooking healthy foods, and you're just overall, and from my understanding, you guys involve the kids in the cooking. So you guys are all cooking healthy foods. All of a sudden, the frame around from a kid's perspective, what those foods are, because we all kind of grew up with like, ew, vegetables, yay, sugary cereals, and, all of these things. It's very interesting to me kind of, through, like I keep talking about osmosis, and through, experience that kids can pick up a real importance towards food. Do you guys get a ton of pushback at home when it comes to your kids eating differentiated foods and new foods, things like that?
And then mussel stew the other day. Just to jump
well, we had the mussel stew.
We'd like to explore.
Delicious.
And one thing is about creativity. So Tommy, our 5-year-old, is now at the stage. We started out when they were both 2. We started introducing everything from like seasoning. At 2, both my son and daughter started chopping vegetables with supervision.
Love it.
And I was, in fact, one of my little Facebook videos was be sure you use a sharp knife. And you're like, what? And it sounds counterintuitive.
Thank you. Yep.
If you use a dull knife, the kid is putting their hand closer to the knife blade. You got a nice sharp knife, they can hold that knife a good safe distance away. You put a little string on when you get to this point of the vegetable, you stop and I'll take over. They can just really chop. And so then you need a sharp knife with little kids. It sounds counterintuitive, but that's what you got to do. And one thing we did is when Tommy was born, we made like 5 different meals trying to get him to eat. And finally we're like, enough of this. We're just going to make one thing and he's going to eat. And I went
That's
back.
right.
My military experience with SEER School, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape. And I talk about pine needle tea. It is the most disgusting stuff you will ever taste. But after 3 or 4 days with no food, man, it's delicious.
Is that exactly what I think it is?
Yeah, take the pine needles and boil them in the water. That's exactly it.
Oh my God, a little honey maybe, I don't know.
So my thing is like, hey, he may not want it right now. Give him an hour or 2. Daddy, I want dinner. Great. Here you go.
Yep.
But where the transformation is to get in the cooking process, they start doing the cooking. And so Tommy, he circling back to how this started, he's made 2 meals by himself now without my involvement other than taking pictures, and I had to reach the paprika because I couldn't reach it. But he made lamb omelets. I wasn't sure that would taste good.
Yes.
It was delicious. And he made pizza with topped with shrimp and chicken. He made a sauce with pesto and avocado mayonnaise, and then used this cheese alternative. So now it's like, it's not just eating healthy, it's the creative process of creating something, just like you create Legos or blocks or that type of thing. That's
right. And, we do at my school here in Ashburn Village, we have a garden. We have a totally organic, sustainable garden. By sustainable, I mean, even where we do our splash pad, we have water that runs down, the water then drains out and then into our garden. So even the water we're using to have fun goes right into our garden. But if you can imagine, the reason I bring that up is, we involve the kids in that growth. And I have seen truly amazing things. Kids walking up to a bush of peppers and picking a pepper off, not a hot pepper, but then just crunching a pepper right then and there. If they're hungry, a cucumber, you can take a cucumber off, scrub the spikies off it, and eat it right then and there. And I think what ends up happening, like you're saying, is in that experience, children have ownership in what they're making, what they're creating, what they're building. And then ultimately, just as we as artists, I'm a musician myself, just as me, like kind of sitting back and listening to a track I just recorded, somebody then eating a meal that they just made. That's kind of that instant gratification, which I think is so cool. Now, Tom, I know that we have talked about in our kind of pre-interview, we talked a little bit about your leadership experiences that you've taken kids on. And again, with this kind of experiential learning focus that both of you are really tapping into, did you find, now in a little context, maybe you can give the context into that program, but what I found in our talk is that your kids really walked away after being challenged with adversity, which I think is the key, right? Like, you have to be faced with adversity to then rise above and grow. So what were some of the really meaningful moments for you in creating that leadership program around kind of giving kids experiences where they're challenged?
Well, in no particular order, first thing was the fact that a lot of parents came to me. I started getting involved in the corporate leadership thing. So, hey, they'd hear what their kids are doing, thinking, this is better. We're doing it at work. We need you to come to my company and do this kind of stuff.
That's so awesome.
Seeing the creativity. So last year we did a trek through northern Michigan with a former high school teacher that I had who traveled every country around the world. And we took this northern Michigan. We went rappelling down a cave. I'm probably an old abandoned mine. Well, I shouldn't say abandoned mine. It's a no longer used mine. It's a supervised activity. It's a whole event built around that.
Very cool
thing. And we got to race horse and buggies on Mackinac Island, where we were controlling them, not like some guide. We were doing it. And
oh my God,
crazy stuff. And so one of the kids asked this one thing, and they did a very creative scenario for one of the challenges. Was basically you got this sort of pit of fire, if you will, a notional pit of fire. You've got to get this bucket full of ping pong balls out of it using a bunch of ropes and things without entering a certain circle, and people can't move. They got to stay in their stationary spots. And they said to me, what was the best idea you've had out of this? I said, every time I've done this, I've never seen a repeat solution. And I've been doing this since 2013.
So cool.
And I said, the best solution is the one that works. Now, if I put time constraints, it's obviously the fastest solution, therefore works. But the idea is many successful ways of doing things. And that's the big learning point for the kids. There's no right way to do something. There's a lot of different ideas. And you also get in different perspectives. So our first running of the program, we had everyone from high school athletes to one young man who had social problems from being autistic and ADHD. And they all melded together in a group. They all saw what each other brought to the table.
In action, I would imagine, too. I think that's the most important thing is people in general these days are just a lot of talk. And we then pass that down to our children in a lot of talk, when I truly know that learning comes in action, like you're saying, and in experience. It's nice to know that, no matter what type of neurodiversity, cultural diversity, socioeconomic diversity, when you're posed in a situation as such where you got to get the job done, it's amazing what can happen. And like you said, what the solutions can be, because, you think about our public schooling system. I have my own opinions. I won't throw them 100% out there, but you think about our public schooling system, that if we know that you get a group of people together and there can be almost infinite amount of solutions to a problem, yet we teach in one way to solve it. And if you got that way, then you get a check mark. But if you don't, unfortunately, you're considered, and really the only person that feels the weight of that, I think, is the kid. So I think ultimately, it's really, really cool to expose people to these types of experiences, and in general with your kids, no matter how old they are, to face those challenges. Now, back to you, Isabel, in saying, when we're talking about cooking, and you're writing your cookbook and you're putting your cookbook together, do you guys have a title for that cookbook?
Yes, right. It's Beat the Ultimate Guide to Nutrient Dense.
Nutrients Guide.
It's all good. Trust me. You get on camera and all of a sudden your brain, I get it.
Nutrient dense recipes. So it's an introduction to nutrient dense eating and healthy cooking. So really focusing on nutrients and grabbing ingredients that are very high in
superfoods.
Vitamin D, superfoods, exactly.
And you see anecdotes where I apply some of the leadership principles in the cookbook. So I'll try to apply a leadership lesson about delegating and cooking, and then tying in the kids and the lessons there, and you'll see photos of them doing things.
I even think we could figure out, I'd love to kind of keep in touch post this show, because I think we could figure out something really cool here at the school. We have a full kitchen. We have, like I said, a sustainable garden that will be growing. We work with a company called Legacy Farms. I think we could definitely make something happen, because I'm really interested in how anything around food can be a really powerful learning moment, right? There's so much, like you said, Tom, there's so much that's involved beyond just, applying heat to things. There's so much, like you said, the delegation, things like that. But as a Montessori educator myself, in Montessori, we teach kids to use real items as much as possible, real knives, real forks, real cups. Let's kind of unpack that a little bit more. So you started with your kiddos cutting, right? Using sharp knives, which we teach. It's so funny. We teach the same concept in Montessori, because that's a chef trick. You learn that in chef school, is if your knives aren't sharp, you're way more likely to cut yourself than if they are. But let's talk about that. So your kiddos specifically started, cutting. Where are they at now? What would you say the growth in that has been?
So Tommy can basically do everything. If I just said, here, Tommy, I need some work to do. Can you cook the salmon for me? And I did that last night, frankly. Tommy, I need you to cook the salmon for me. So
he'll dress it.
He dresses it. He went there. He cut the lime in half using the limes, and he did everything from soup to nuts. Turned the oven on. I did put the fish in the oven, but he did everything. And actually, it's good for parents, because it saves me. I can saves me a task, and he loves doing it. And he's like, "Dad, you got to taste this." And then he ate that thing like it was going out of style yesterday. I mean, he was taking it, putting on Hawaiian bread, making sandwiches out of it.
Oh my God.
He made it, and he's showcasing. I want to show Grandpa Tom my creation. And he was. We were on the FaceTime, and he's showing everybody at a birthday party for my family in Michigan. And he's showing everybody, look at this. I made this. I did this. And
so cool.
Izzy, she can season things by herself. She's able to cut things. I help. She stirs. So she's not on the. I still watch her very closely when she's got the knife.
For sure.
I've taught her a technique where basically she'll put her hand on top of the knife, because what happens is you're trying to use two hands, and sometimes that knife, that other hand would slip on the blade a little bit.
Yeah. So
if you need support, firm grip, then go on top of the knife and press your hand down. And she uses that sometimes for harder things to cut. And so she's there yet, but she doesn't cut all things. She doesn't quite have the strength to do that. I let her try different things. I'll let her, cut the flank steak when it's done. I'll let her try doing, okay, you're not quite there yet, but you got the technique down. You're just not strong enough yet.
Yeah, and remind the viewers how old your kids are.
5 and 3.
I want to stop on that, guys, because I want everybody to hear that. These are families. These are parents of 2 kids that are 5 and 3 that. For me, this is somewhat of the norm, being that I'm a Montessori teacher, and that's been kind of outside the box for a long time now, and now it's kind of coming back in. But it is extremely possible for a 5 and a 3-year-old to prepare, and a 5-year-old to prepare dinner not just like cut this or sprinkle this, like one task, like the multitude of tasks it takes to cook dinner at home. And what we see with that is a direct positive outcome. You know, like they're saying their kiddos were super happy to serve this and we're super proud of it. And when you start empowering kids as such, and this kind of goes for both of you, when you empower kids with that ability to be independent, and not only independent, but giving, right? They're offering their food to you. These are the character traits that will be important when we are all older. You know, no longer is education so focused on rote memorization. We have Siri. I can ask Alexa or Siri anything I want to, and it tells me the answer. So it's these types of skills as we see the generation that was, you know, bulldozer or lawnmower parenting kind of rising up, and they're very fragile. There's tons of ideas, there's tons of energy, there's tons of excitement, which I think is very positive, but there's also a fragile side to them that, you know, can't take critique, can't fail. And I think we really need to turn around and say, like, you know, what happens if a kid uses a knife? Well, they might cut themselves. And you know what? The next time they pick up that knife, they have much more respect for that knife than they ever would. Would you guys agree?
Well, I'll add also part of the learning curve was for me. So, you know, for those listening that may think there's no way, oh my goodness, a 2-year-old with a knife and maybe the audience is not like, but I had to learn as well to let go of it as a parent. Because when we started, I think Tom was a lot more comfortable. I was the sort of the more like, oh my goodness, and I still get people that'll chime in. They'll see a video. I was like, "Oh, you're letting him, you know, cut with a knife," and how they don't understand the training process. That it actually took a while. You know, he started very young, just being comfortable with the utensil and doing it. And now he's able to carve pumpkins. You know, Tom has them, carving pumpkins, and so don't also as a parent stress if you're not there yet. You can get there. Just be open-minded and see that the result long-term, it does help. It, the younger they start, the more and it takes time from you as well as a parent to take the time to help them through it. The consistency and discipline.
And to add to that is this is what's important to couples to trust each other. So Isabel mentioned about when I gave, so this past Halloween, I got pumpkins for the kids. They had their own pumpkin. I gave them their own knives and they cut. Isabel said, I can't watch this. Honey, I love you. I trust you. I know you're going to do the right thing. I'm just going to take a walk, so I have to watch it.
Totally.
And so the thing is, though, Isabel, her part is, look, she has a less degree of comfort. She's getting more comfortable with it, but she let me and trusted me as a parent, not just the idiot husband. I mean, she actually trusted me to actually do this. And
right.
do what I was doing, and I had a certain comfort with that. And so she trusts me to do that. And that's the key, because some of us parents, you might be at different spots with this, but if you trust each other, you can find a balance.
And I think
the structure also, like I'd say, make sure also is in health, going back to healthy eating, nutrients, that the food that you want them to eat is accessible as well, so that they're also I add that, like the nutritional component, that this is healthier, and then we've never deprived the kids of anything, so I think that doesn't help. I really support eating. I don't want to think sugars, but I also don't make it try not to make it a reward, but sort of let them. I love empowering them to make the decision. Eventually, you might not see it immediately. And that's another point. Sometimes as parents, we don't see the result immediately, but years in the long run, you will see it. And
absolutely.
Here's something philosophically I like to add to that. So, like, for instance, ever since we were, Tommy had his teeth, started brushing his teeth, I was really about, okay, Tommy, brush your own teeth. And now I would let him do it. Now, what was really going on, and I would always do a spot check. Now, in his earlier years, the spot check was essentially me brushing his teeth correctly.
That's right.
What happened was now he's 5 and he's brushing his teeth flawlessly. The dentist is impressed. And we've actually had neighbors who have older kids. Can you show my kids how to brush their teeth? Because they didn't start the process till the kid was 5 or 6. And
that's
so now
right.
He's been doing it since he was just before 2. And now by that time, by doing it, fumbling, learning the wrong way, seeing like when I do my spot check, what's the correct way, then he eventually figures it out and says, aha, I can do it.
I think with all of those I can do it. You talk about trust, which I think is really important, right? And I think we demand as adults trust from kids when that's not how we earn trust, right? Like, how do you earn trust as an adult? Well, it's through action. And I think, and it's through time. I think time is a big pillar there too. And we ask kids to kind of you must trust me and respect me because I'm older. And guess what? That just doesn't work. And I think, in giving them a knife at 2 years old and showing them, in involving them and having the patience it takes, because that's the key that you mentioned, Isabel, is that it requires patience from the adult to actually allow them to do the wrong thing, to allow them to for you as the guide to be there as a parent to say, well, let me just, try this way or try this way. I love the idea. There's this great metaphor that I heard on a leadership podcast, I believe it was, where we were talking about leadership from the front, right? If you lead from the front, then you're blocking the vision of anybody behind you. And the people that are following you don't have any idea where they're going other than you. And so that tends to be a ping point. And then there's a dependency that's built there in leadership. And then he talked about how leading from behind, giving those you've been on that path before, you can guide them a little bit here and there to stay on the correct path, yet have them excite their visions and be able to see forward. And I always found that really a meaningful thing, because in the sense of what we're talking about, rather than just doing it for them and expecting them to, okay, now I follow my way, have them experience their own process. Because again, like you said, if they get to 5 and they've been doing it since they were with anything, since they were 2, there's a confidence that's built there. And it's not a confidence within the parent. It's a self-confidence. It's a self-awareness that, again, will be so powerful when those kids grow up. That trait, those character traits of resiliency and grit, are super, super, super embedded from those experiences. So good on you guys. I think it's fantastic.
I don't know if they're going to show up real well. This is a picture of them carving the pumpkins. This is if they were done.
Look at that.
They carved these pumpkins.
I love that. And let's call that out, right? If you were to look at these jack-o'-lanterns and mom or dad that wants the perfect picture on the front porch with these mangled jack-o'-lanterns, I want to be, and yet, how did you guys handle that? Did you guys go and say, what did you, those look like they got knifed? Or was there a positivity around that, I would imagine?
Actually, I thought they were awesome. I mean,
yeah.
I'm starting going like shocked. You're saying something, calling these things. I'm looking at these things going, these look like things out of a horror movie. I loved it.
I love it. I mean, it's all perspective. My point is again, I think you and I and Isabel all kind of share in this same idea and philosophy. My point is that a lot of people, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here, is a lot of people would look at that and say like, oh, that is not what's on the cover of a magazine, right? But that's not what's important. What's important is those kids did it, right?
And I had to, and I'll just add that's very true. And I'll add that I think life's not always that. Obviously, it's chaotic. It's not always that. And so by teaching kids that, yes, one of the things is also just letting them make messes and not trying to control and just teaching them that what they, what they're doing, they're not getting that what they're putting their energy in, is something that, that one size doesn't fit all is so important. So tying back, that's obviously not your Facebook, Instagram going to get, or in my, but, sort of. And then I think also with social media, a lot of images now are like,
thank you.
Shooting and certain things. And this might be very controversial. I mean, we have one with Tommy with the machete there.
Right.
And then, but, at the end, it's Tommy. He's the one that's learning. We want him to, and he's not going to be able, to learn well if we don't start early.
Well, and let's be real, there's more of a world than the United States of America. And in most countries, especially countries in South America, in the jungles and things, a machete is a natural tool that is introduced at a very young age to be able to clear fields, clear walks, clear paths. And I mean, that's where I kind of, I've traveled quite a bit, and in my travels, you see a lot. Like I was in the very, very southern western tip of Mexico, this little place called Troncones. It's a beautiful, beautiful area, but it's a very remote area. It's a surf town. And I went there and I saw a Montessori school there. And in that Montessori school, now mind you, most Montessori schools have these expensive prepared materials that have been painted beautifully and everything. These kids were in a Montessori school with acorns as materials that they've made with their own hands. And these are young kids, 3 to 6 year olds, right? and they were having much stronger, powerful, more authentic learning experiences than a lot of the kids in the States. And it kind of goes back to, we have to put ourselves in perspective and understanding that while American culture tends to be very, very conservative in what we allow our children to do, exponentially around the world, kids are empowered to do these things because it's just everyday life. So I think overall, me seeing a child with a machete, knowing the context of how much preparation went into that and respect for the tool that went into that, rather than judgment, it's much more about I look at that as a really strong, empowering moment, because again, that kind of levels the playing field between adult and child. And I've always said to parents, and parents have a tough time with this, is, you don't deserve any more respect than your child because you're older. What you do have over your child is wisdom, and wisdom comes in time. So please deliver this wisdom to your child rather than demanding this walled, you must respect my authority. No, they have to trust you. And in moments like this, like you guys are describing, is how they do so. So,
and I also see this, for instance, I can also tell what kind of people empower their kids based on what behavior I see at work. For example, we have one of our coworkers outside who's
continue. I'll be right back.
Okay. What he's talking about. So the thing is you talk about leading from the front. Now, for me, leading from the front is setting the example. Never asking to do things that you wouldn't do yourself. But it's also letting people do the things. And so many people, they lead from the front where they do everything. And so in one case, the biggest habit why I see people advance in leadership is I was actually doing some executive coaching with someone who was a CEO. And I said, you're trying to do the COO's job. That's the job you just came from. Let that, but he's going to mess. Okay, you know what? You're already messing up your CEO job because you're trying to do the COO's job.
Right.
So, you've got to learn. People learn from their mistakes, and let them learn from their mistakes, and also learn from your successes. Learn about what was an absolute act of brilliance, and one was I don't know if you've read Loon Shots or not by Safi Bakal.
No.
How innovation happens. How sometimes we can think our success is due to our pure genius, where he talks about a guy taking an ill-advised shot in soccer, and it went in simply because the keeper slipped in mud. Well, it wouldn't work, but we think, oh yes, I'm a genius. Look at that. So, but you learn from those success. Analyze your successes, analyze your mistakes, and learn from them. And you certainly learn a lot from your mistakes, but you have to let people fail. If we're so worried about failure, we don't let someone try, because the kid might not do it right. Or the pumpkin, if I let them carve it, it won't look like our Home and Gardens magazine cover, or whatever the thing is, whether you're dealing with adults or children. You've got to let people make the mistake, let them try it and learn from it.
And I think a lot of people that are surfacing now as a grown-up, successful, and you read them, you read about them in books, and it really people that are able to deal with this adversity, with chaos, and bring a system to the chaos. And I see that in the workforce, where people just are like, oh, I thought it was, perfect. They just don't when you start encountering with them something that's new at work. Merger or something, and you just can't deal with it.
Well, it's interesting because obviously I lead a company, and a company that's exponentially growing and will grow exponentially more. And so, in that, I've learned through, and I tell people this, I tell my employees this in our brand training and all of that, is the only way that I'm sitting in the position that I'm sitting in is because I've made most of the mistakes you need to make in order to sit there. And so front facing that, even with kids and talking with kids a lot about, it's okay to fail. We fail forward, and you can fail and learn from that experience. And if you're not learning, then that's the issue. And it's the same thing I tell my employees is look, I very much understand that you're going to fail, and I'm going to fail. And I look at my business as it's all my fault, everything. So if someone messes up on that's a cleaner or a floater at my building, it goes all the way up and back to me. It's my fault because I haven't empowered the team appropriately to get the job done appropriately. So teaching and front facing that mentality of, before you start pointing fingers, there's three pointing right back at you. Take a look at yourself and see what you did to get there. I think that's such a powerful lesson. But again, like you guys said, is we're in this society of bulldozing parents, where we're saying let me clear this beautiful field for you, and you can go through life feeling that no mistakes will happen and you will never get hurt. And then when a mistake does happen, or you do get hurt, it's like the world ends. I've seen some really, really crazy responses to some very minor failures, I think, because of that. Now, in that sense, and saying, where do you think that it's going to, your guys' mentality, what you guys are doing, the cookbook, where do you think it could lead in the next couple of years? What do you hope for this as you put it out into the world, the cookbook specifically, and your leadership programs, Tom?
Yeah, in a short term, I'd love to be able to, using the cookbook, start introducing more training, virtual and in person, it's really the comfort zone to allow people. There are a lot of families, a lot of women who also are trying to get healthy themselves. And over and over again, I get the, speaking to the people, get the, feedback that a lot of them think they can't because they have to they have to do something for themselves, and then they have to deal with the family. So I don't have time to meal prep, for example. And I think one of the successes that we've been trying to show with the cookbook is that you can actually start healthy habits, healthy eating. It's better to start it early in life. The obesity rates are going up in children right now. And so in the nutritional circle, I'm looking at public health wise, if we don't start earlier, and then also start with yourself as women. And so the more comfortable women and moms and dads feel with cooking in the kitchen, and some people just don't have recipes. They don't know where to start. And I think a lot of the moving forward is knowing the how. So a lot of the challenges, that's just not knowing how to start, the plan not having. And so that's where with the cookbook and with the adjacent like coaching and training, really helping parents become more comfortable in the kitchen, knowing what to shop for a lot, what is healthy, and then also realizing that it's not going to look very pretty, and it's not like your son or your daughter, you may be blessed with a broccoli eater. That's not the case. My son loves it, but it took a while of exposing, of continuous habit building. It's one step at a time, and I'm really hoping that shines through the training in the cookbook.
And then where I tied in, kind of bridging that with more of some of the broader leadership stuff, is, see, the thing is, a lot of people look at my recipes now. I've had people tell me, "Oh my God, Tom, you should write a cookbook." And so, Isabel, I wrote a cookbook.
Yeah,
I love that.
So, yes, I plainly say in the cookbook, the military towns, I was always saving money despite my attempt at spending money. I couldn't spend enough money in a month. Like, God, I still tossed up my bank account. I come to DC, and oh my God, we have a little sticker shock here going on here. The eating out every night thing isn't going to be happening. And, the first meals I cooked, I wouldn't feed to a stray dog. I kid you not. I'm not even exaggerating. I mean, I was, so when people look at this and say, "Oh, I can't cook. You make such beautiful recipes." Yeah. Right. Here's where I started. When you learn something new, you're going to start at something. It's not going to be pretty, and that's okay. If you mess up your first recipe, okay, fine. Order Chinese, bring it back, try it again next time. That's right. You're going to have that experience, and the same thing. When I look at this, I take this is, somebody has to learn from failure and not having, it's not going to be perfect the first time. It's going to be ugly, but you got to learn through it and work through it. And then under Adventures in Leadership, the program there is, I look at people who are not afraid to make decisions. We empower people. And the thing is, there's too many leaders who make themselves. The reason Richard Branson has time to play golf and kite surf and all those kinds of things is he hires people to do all the work for him. He gets updates and such, but he's not trying to do everything, because he's like, if I know more about sending rockets into space than the guy at NASA I hired to get me there, I've hired the wrong person. That's exactly right. and so you take the aspect of, it's like learning a new skill, taking like leadership. You're not going to just read a book, and I do have my book, Leadership Lessons from the Battle of Gettysburg, but it's part of a process. And my leadership training it's a continuous process. When I do executive coaching, there's always feedback and loopholes. In fact, one thing, I got a gig with a United Healthcare affiliate company, and I beat out McKinsey, because what happened was, I said, "What's your curriculum?" "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know what your curriculum is? What do you need?" "What? Like, what is your leadership challenge in your organization that you need?" And they're like, no one's ever asked us that before. They just come in here and say, "This is what we're giving you." "Okay, but what do you need? What are the things your executives need, and how can I?" And then we do an assessment. We get 360 feedback, all this, and then I form the curriculum based on what they tell me they need. It's called personalized learning, and that's exactly kind of that's my wheelhouse. So in saying, I got an alarm going off. But that's exactly what I do for kids, is to say, like, why are we just informing kids with what we think they should be learning and how they should be learning it, when we should be looking at who the person is first, how they learn, and what they need, and then structuring. I mean, that's kind of, people hire you to be the professional in that.
you're clearly capable of it if you're able to do that. And I think there's also, again, that trust that's being built in those experiences by action, not just words. The last thing I wanted to kind of talk about too was, you talk about obesity in kids, and I think that this is a very interesting subject, and we won't dive too deep into it, but I think, while I believe that the body positivity movement is very important, I think kids should definitely feel comfortable in their own skin, especially, kiddos that are born with, certain thyroid issues, things like that. But let's not leave the elephant, I think the elephant in the room is that it's unhealthy. And kids can be very unhealthy if they're very obese, and depending on what foods they're eating, it can be very detrimental to their future and their lifespan in general. Isabel, what would you say on that subject?
I think you're touching on a very important point that I myself have started to realize as being in the field now for a year. That so I would separate data. What's the fact that the studies, what's looking at the long-term risk factors of being overweight, not eating healthy, focusing really on nutrition. And then also the more, sort of the body image, confidence, and that, a woman and a man can have for their body, and so you want to make sure when I speak to my children, when I speak to my clients, it's always about health. It's not about, weight loss is an indicator. And yes, there's certain parameters. Being overweight will put you at a higher risk for developing diabetes later in life. It'll put you at a higher risk for cancer. I come from the cancer field. I worked for 15 years at the National Cancer Institute. And
well, there you go.
Review journals look at prevention and tobacco control. We've done a lot, but we're just moving the clock backwards by not addressing obesity either. So whatever language or words we want to end up using in the field, and there's been controversy with obesity. There's certain cultures that embrace fuller women, like in the Middle East. And so, but at the end of the day, I think if you stick to nutrition, to healthy eating, where no one's going to disagree with you, if this is between health coaches, nutrition, and it's a huge industry now, the nutrition industry, and it's growing in the childhood because of obesity and even child athletes. There's a lot of misinformation and then good information, and then what I do is kind of navigate what actually is peer review, more evidence, and but going back to nutrition, it really, no one's going to disagree with the value of eating your vegetables.
Right.
If you're trying, get healthier for adults, even more, but for children, having their 3 cups of vegetables a day, in exposing a rainbow of vegetables and fruits and just diversity. Also, I'm really interested in sustainability as well. Like with climate change, a lot of Hopkins has been doing some studies. That's my alma mater. I went to Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and they've been doing a lot with just what sort of foods will be sustainable in the long run, and the importance of exposing folks to quinoa, to different grains, and because if we just stick to the same corn, the staplers that we've been, the rice and corn and potato, and so certain things that we're missing over 80% of what's out there in the nutrients and the plants. And so I also like to encourage more of a plant-focused, not plant-based. We have here animal protein, but sort of a plant-focused as well, with making sure we have a variety. We expose the kale, spinach, kolar. Just try to always diversify the menu. But going back, so I think it's going to be a uphill battle. The numbers are going up. Food industry doesn't help. The fast food industry doesn't help, though there's been a lot of change with salad, kava. There's play eateries popping up that are embracing health, even salads at McDonald's. But overall, I think it lies really on teachers and the parents.
100%.
If we're not educating. We rely on TV and the commercials. They're going to be eating McDonald's, and very quickly.
Yeah.
And you have to look at it from a standpoint of just how the overreaction of people. And what I mean by this is, like, first off, factually, I love the body positive movement in terms of we shouldn't be bullying people and that type of thing and shaming people. But the fact of the matter is, people who are healthier can perform better. I mean, the military embracing nutrition, and when you have less sleep and those type of things, at SEER school, we certainly saw how how our body deteriorated and our mind ability deteriorated when we weren't getting the proper nutrition. And you look at NFL athletes. So we were just watching a thing yesterday on the NFL Network about how the preparation that goes into their games in England, nutritional stuff they do, so they can be at their optimal performance. And we have to accept both these things as true. And what I've seen, for example, Adele published a selfie of her with no words, just saying, "Hey, this is my new outfit." And what people notice is her weight drop. Apparently, she changed her diet. And there's all these people attacking her for this. And they go,
even Boris Johnson, the prime minister, he had COVID. He went out in public. Now he started obesity campaign in England to try to reduce, but there's a lot of backlash, and I think that's good. I think social media again there's all trollers, people that are one thing you say and just blow it to one extreme, the other extreme, and
the idea is I talk about this in leadership, and I class political debates. One aspect of my leadership is cross-cultural communication, and you can take two seemingly opposite things and have them in your head and both be true at the same time. In other words, we shouldn't be bullying people who are overweight, but people who are overweight do have health risks, and that's factual. And one thing I've sort of been frustrated about with this COVID thing, that is one thing Fauci could be telling people, hey, one thing you could be doing right now is improving your diet. That's one thing you could be doing that could help reduce your risk. That's something you can control.
Actually, NIH, for full disclosure, I worked for the National Institutes of Health for many years before I leaned in and did career change but you're going to start seeing more nutritional research.
Sure.
Nutrition is trying to look at how, and I think with COVID, it's shining the light that vaccines, they're protective measures, but if your immune system is not healthy, if your vitamin
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not good. So it's all hands on board. You have to really tackle this from all angles.
Well, and and you guys are right. That's the conversation we're not having in America is what things can you be doing to boost your immune system directly? And the numbers don't lie. I think we're both all of us here are data-driven people, and I think you look at the data, and it's vastly, vastly overwhelming in regards to COVID. Who's dying from COVID? It's the elderly and definitely people that have pre-existing conditions. One of those being, if not the top, obesity. So you have to look at, and that would be standard for pretty much any disease that you have out there. And cancer is directly related in a lot of ways, as you probably know, to sugars and the way sugars process in your body and things like that. So it's this conversation that we're afraid to have right now because everybody is very, very judgmental. Like we said, the Instagram movement, the daily pictures that have been so doctored that you can't even recognize who the actual person is if you ever meet them in person. Because I think it's so important to feel self-confident. I think it's so important to be self-aware. But I think where we lose that is if someone is, and this is an extreme scenario, 700 pounds, right? Then that is a dangerous, dangerous weight to be at, no matter what age, no matter what size you are as a person, to where that could ultimately lead to a very early death. And I always look at, there's one thing that's definite or in this world is that we are born and that we die, and that the time in between those two things is, to me, the most valuable, right? How are you spending every day? And if you are making choices in your life to shorten that time frame, then you need to kind of take a look at your life and structure it around, you need to be able to look forward to things and do things that empower yourself and make you feel self-confident. And I can't stress enough, and we talk a lot about this with kids and adults, if you're not at that place, consult a mental health professional, talk to somebody about it, develop those skills over time through practice, just like anything else, just like losing weight, just like being healthy, just like anything out there. You have to put the time and work into it. But ultimately, when it comes to wellness, especially when it comes to your body and health and your body's health, is you start doing those things and your mental health improves significantly because you're putting that energy somewhere. You're that negative, that fire that's in your body, you're putting it in other places. So I think, unfortunately, we do have to wrap up, and I think we could talk about this forever and ever and ever. But guys, first of all, Tom and Isabel Coyle are doing some really awesome things. Guys, where can people find you on the internet best to check out your programs?
Well, to the BeTheUltimateYou.life.
I love that. BeTheUltimateYou.life. I'll put that link in the comments. And Tom, did you have adventures in leadership?
The domain is adventures, the letter N, leadership.com, adventuresinleadership.com.
Thank you.
Some revamping because we're going to merge these together.
I love it.
To kind of, get more.
There's a lot of synergy going on with this, and it all ties together. All ties to empowering people, whether we're dealing with fellow executives, children, what have you. But clear focus on children and young people, because that's, I think, they're not getting that needed adversity training, dealing with adversity, challenging themselves, and that's what we're trying to really.
And the cookbook also, thank you. We'll have that link on the website. It's Be the Ultimate You Guide to Nutrient-Dense Healthy Eating.
I love it. I love it. And hopefully you guys, I respect you guys so much for pushing the needle forward, and thank you guys for coming on the show and for everything that you guys do. We're probably going to have a lot of the guests come back on to do some forum conversations. I'd like to have multiple guests back on to talk certain topics. So I hope you guys will consider that in the future. And thanks again so much for tuning in. I'm going to jump you guys off for a second and say goodbye. My friends, thank you so much for tuning into At the Gardens. What a great conversation as always. I love to keep it loose and conversational because great things come out of it. Keep tuning in. Thank you so much for your attention during this time. I hope you guys have a fantastic Labor Day. Enjoy this beautiful weather. It's going to be absolutely wonderful. As always, keep your head up. Keep moving forward. This is Garrett Wilhelm from Creative Gardens and At the Gardens. Have a great day. Bye.